This winter, Hulu and Disney Plus are better together in a brand new bundle.
That's wicked.
Wicked good.
With titles like Disenchanted and Willow on Disney Plus. And Fleischman is in Trouble and Welcome to Chippendales on Hulu.
I love this place.
All for just $9.99 a month. All of these and more now streaming. 18 and over only. Access content from each service separately. Offer valid for eligible subscribers only. Terms apply. See the DisneyBundle.com for details.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Con Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, A-M-P-I-R-E. You should know that by now, and it's always much appreciated. In a minute, I'll be joined by ESPN's Nick Wagoner to discuss the San Francisco 49ers. Nick has covered them for a while, so he knows everything about them. He's going to give you good insight. But we're also going to talk about how the Niners and Washington compare, because they kind of start to build the rosters the same way, somewhat of a similar approach to a lot of things, defense, run game, etc. Where Nick has watched the Commanders, so he's seen both teams very well, or a lot. And so how does he think the Commanders compare to where they're at in the building process to the Niners? What separates the Niners defense from Washington? So I think he gives you some good insight there. Stay tuned for that in a minute. Before we get there, let's go over some news, notes, and injury information, etc. Let's start with the Pro Bowl. That's the good news for Washington, because 4 guys made it were named to the team. You have defensive tackle John Allen, punter Tress Way, special teams performer Jeremy Reeves, and wide receiver Terry McLaurin. The first 3 were named as starters. McLaurin was named as a reserve. It's very hard to make the team as a receiver, just because there's so much talent at that position. But the starters in this game for the NFC that were named were A.J. Brown and then Justin Jefferson. Those are deserved. Then the C.D. Lamb and McLaurin were named as reserves. Anyways, all that's very much deserved for this entire group. By the way, Daron Payne was named as a first alternate and Montez Sweat as a second alternate. As far as McLaurin, it's nice to see the guy get recognized like this. I think it really helped him that he had some big time catches that received a lot of highlights, whether it's the Packers game or the Colts game, among others. So I think that definitely helped him get over that. I think, the fact that there was a lot of attention on him in the offseason with the contract, I think maybe it opened some eyes around the league, as far as maybe not so much around players, but maybe others, about how valuable this guy is. And, then he's continued to produce. I mean, his yards per catch are top 10. That's really good. So I think it's 14.93. It's top 10. That's very good. The guy that I'm really happy for is Jeremy Reeves. This is a guy, he's been with the team since 2018. First time he's made the team out of camp was this year. But the guy was always on the fringe, but the coaches always tell him, like, hey, you're right there, you're right there, you're right there. So you keep working, you keep working, you keep working, and this is the reward. And he is a highly respected person in that locker room, full of energy, a very good leader. After the game the other night, and this isn't the only way you lead, but it's something that he knows he can do as a veteran. He went up to Taylor Heineke in the locker room, just kind of stopped as he was on his way out, put his arm around him. They talked for a couple minutes, and as much an encouragement, Reeves giving him encouragement as anything else. But that's the little things that this guy does. And he's very vocal, but he's very, very smart. This guy figured out how he needed to stick around. It was just simply by working, get a little bit better, get a little bit better, get a little bit better, keep playing hard, keep playing fast, make it tough to cut them and stick around. And that's what he did. On Wednesday was his reward. I don't think there's going to be anybody that that players in that locker room would be happier for. I'm sure they would be happy for McLaurin as well. But Reeves' story is such a good one, because he's the ultimate underdog tale. So good for him. And Allen, obviously well-deserved, had a great year. Tress Way, very well-deserved. And it's nice to see Way and Reeves make it together, because I think the way they've been with each other for a while now, and I just think they play off each other very well. Or Reeves really knows how to read what Tress Way is going to do. I think, they all make each other better. So good for them. Anyway, And again, I told you Payne, first alternate, Sweat, second alternate. So let's get now to the injury report. And the only one that I'm on there that's on there that I think you have a great, I shouldn't say great deal, but if there's any concern to be with safety Cam Curl. And I don't know, he was listed as limited. He's got an ankle injury, was listed as limited on Tuesday as well. I don't know what his status is for Saturday yet, but the only reason I bring it up is because he got that ankle injury. And if you have a couple guys with the Niners that are going to be really tough to cover, Christian McCaffrey, tight end George Kittle. How are you going to do that? And so certainly he would factor into that. So if he can't go, that would be a problem. Now, I don't know if he's going to be able to go or not. His name, it really hasn't come up. We've just seen it on the injury report, and we'll talk to Ron Rivera on Thursday and get more of an update there. So, but again, you don't want to lose a guy like that. And you don't want to have that guy like that maybe even be a little bit impaired just because the assignment that he's probably going to have to face. And it's going to be a key one to beating the Niners. So there you go. And then the other one is Benjamin St-Juste. Definitely, he said he was going to play. Ron Rivera said he was going to, that he thought St-Juste was going to play. So I think it's going to be that's a good news for Washington. Defensive end Chase Young, let's just stay at the same point. I can tell you a bunch of things. I don't know that you want to hear. I think what you want to see is him out on the field. My gut, we don't even go there. We can talk about that more in the keys and predictions. And we'll get more of an update from Rivera on Thursday about his status as well. That's just all I'll say. We're not going to go any more on that. So anyway, that's it for me. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Now let's get to ESPN's Nick Wagoner to talk about the San Francisco 49ers and how they compare to Washington.
This winter, Hulu and Disney Plus are better together in a brand new bundle.
That's wicked. Wicked good.
With titles like Disenchanted and Willow on Disney Plus. And Fleischman is in Trouble and Welcome to Chippendales on Hulu.
I love this place.
All for just $9.99 a month. All of these and more now streaming. 18 and over only. Access content from each service separately. Offer valid for eligible subscribers only. Terms apply. See the DisneyBundle.com for details.
Well, Nick, a few weeks ago, Garoppolo goes down, and you're thinking, oh, are the Niners done? And now Brock Purdy is looking like, the next coming of whatever. How surprised are you at what this team has done with Brock Purdy and given all that's gone on?
Yeah, there's kind of two layers to that, John. First of all, I'm not surprised that the 49ers are still good and competitive with Brock Purdy. And mainly because I always say, I believe the 49ers amongst the teams in the league that are successful are the least quarterback dependent team in the league. And what I mean by that is not that they don't care about quarterback, but because of the playmakers they have, because of the play caller that they have, because of the defense that they have, they can compete so long as they have someone at quarterback who just doesn't screw it up. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Brock Purdy by saying that, but just use that as kind of the basis for where we're going with this. But I will add that what we've seen from Brock Purdy, and granted it's been 2 games and 3 quarters roughly that he has been the starting quarterback for this team, he has exceeded my expectations. I think he has exceeded the 49ers expectations. I don't think anyone expected him to do what he's done because he isn't just managing the game. He isn't just being risk averse and not making mistakes and doing all those things. He's making plays. When you turn on the tape and you watch him play against Miami or Tampa, especially both of those teams, they're blitzing a third of the time. Miami was throwing 0 blitzes at him. I think they had 5 or 6 of those. And he's making the first guy miss and then keeping his eyes downfield and on the run, making a play down the field. Those are things that no one expected from him. And frankly, they're things that Jimmy Garoppolo just didn't really have in his bag. And that's not a knock on him. It's just something that wasn't a part of his game. And so Brock Purdy has kind of elevated them in a way that nobody expected. I'm not ready to sit here and say we need to make sweeping declarations about his future. We've seen guys be flashing the pans before in these types of situations, but for right now, what we can base it off of, he's checking every box, he's passing every test. He goes up to Seattle. It's a hard atmosphere. Everybody knows how difficult it is to win up there. It's been a huge thorn in the Niners side for a long time. Playing up there. The division is on the line. He's got a rib and an oblique injury where he didn't even throw in practice last week. The Niners weren't sure he was even going to make it through that game. And he goes out and has another really good game, makes some plays against Seattle. And a Seattle team, mind you, John, that wasn't blitzing him like crazy. I wanted to see how he would do against a team that's going to drop and play more coverage. And the Seahawks did that, and he still had success. So he's, like I said, just kind of slowly, methodically checking off the boxes. I know a lot of people are getting excited and they want to have these big, huge conversations. That's just not my style, as you know. But I think if we're just evaluating on what we've seen so far, he's kind of gone above and beyond what anyone could have reasonably expected.
Well, I'm disappointed because my next question was going to be who's going to present him in Canton. So I guess you're not ready to answer that question yet.
Well, you probably, since you're clearly his biggest fan if you're asking that question already.
But it is, but in watching him a little bit, one thing too, it's a reminder how well Kyle Shanahan can manage a game with a quarterback, right? Because it seems like he puts him in good positions and creates some good lanes for him to throw, or with the misdirections, like the touchdown pass to Kittle last week. Incredible play, but it's set up because of how he does it. But it seems like this offense puts him in a good spot to then have success.
It definitely does, John. And I will point to one factor in this that has been the biggest change for the 49ers this season, what has turned their season on its head and turned them from a team that everyone thought could be a contender to a team that is a contender. And it's Christian McCaffrey. And if you go back and you watch that Seattle game, there's a few plays. It happens a lot, but people talk about out here, especially Steph Curry, the gravity of Steph Curry, what it opens up for others because so many things are attracted to Steph Curry. Christian McCaffrey has had a similar effect on this offense, and he is producing. Don't get me wrong. I think 5 of his 7 starts, he's had over 100 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. So he's definitely making plays. Don't get me wrong, but he's also opening things up for everybody else. They're averaging, John, almost 8 points more per game as an offense since he took over as the starting running back. So taking away the Kansas City game, which he had limited amount of snaps because he was there 2 days earlier, but he started 7 games since then. They're averaging almost 8 points more per game, and they're 7-0 in those games. And it doesn't feel like a coincidence to me, right? Like when you watch this team, they had a defense that was Super Bowl ready immediately. And now they can play that kind of style of complementary football that everybody always talks about, where, the defense is getting a stop or a takeaway and the offense is turning it into points. And then special teams does this job. And all of a sudden it's an avalanche rolling downhill and you're down by a couple touchdowns. And with how good their defense is, there's no way to come back because they're going to run the ball effectively and they're going to keep playing defense. So all of that works together. Absolutely. Kyle Shanahan is a huge part of this. He and Brock Purdy seem to be kind of in lockstep. The amount of confidence that Kyle Shanahan has in Brock Purdy is impressive. I mean, go back to that Seattle game the other night. They're backed up to their 1. All of a sudden, it's a 1-possession game. Shanahan trusts Purdy to throw. He fires a 3rd down dart to Juwan Jennings for a 1st down, keeps the drive going. A couple plays later, he dials up a rollout for him on 3rd and short. Purdy takes off running and gets a 1st down. These are the types of things where you wouldn't think that you would have that kind of confidence, but Brock Purdy has earned that confidence based on what he's done. And Kyle Shanahan called him the most poised rookie quarterback he's ever coached. And I think that speaks volumes.
Well, it does, because he coached a couple of rookies here, but to your point about McCaffrey, because I go back to the touchdown pass to Kittle, because it's a fake to the left, but then it's a massive fake swing to the right to screen to McCaffrey. And it was set up because they ran it over and over and over again. And you have 4 guys flying over there and you lose George Kittle.
Yep. And they did it on the second touchdown too. Right. John, the second one is a designed swing pass to the left to McCaffrey. He's got Kyle Juszczyk leading him out there. So he's just supposed to throw a little swing pass in the flat to McCaffrey. 3 Seahawks defenders all run right at Christian McCaffrey. Jordan Brooks, the middle linebacker, realizes kind of midstream, like, oh crap, this is bad. And George Kittle, who was the 4th read on that play, wide open over the top, 54-yard touchdown. So that's the thing. And the beautiful thing for the Niners and what works so well for Purdy in this situation is if you have McCaffrey out there, if you have Deebo Samuel, if you have George Kittle, these aren't just regular run-of-the-mill guys who are getting the ball in lieu of Christian McCaffrey. These are guys who also have gravity of their own and draw attention. And so it is a mix of skill position guys that certainly the best group of skill position guys the Niners have had since Kyle Shanahan's been here, but you could make the argument it's the best group in the league right now, aside from the quarterback, when you go tight end, running back, and 2 receivers.
The funny thing is, I think that whole formula is what Washington is trying to get to, where you build something with a run game, but you have weapons like Curtis Samuel, who's a little bit like a Deebo Samuel, similar type role. And you have Terry McLaurin, you have Jahan Dotson, you have some interesting tight ends. And then you have the defense, but the Niners have clearly taken a little bit of a different step. Why do you think it is working so well for them with that formula?
Yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this. This is my fourth time on your podcast, fourth or fifth time. I feel so privileged, first of all, but we've talked about this a lot. Where it always seems like Washington has been trying to kind of follow a similar model, just a year or two behind. That's all it is. Like, I turn on the tape. I was watching some Washington this morning, and I watched that defensive line. I'm like, wow, I'm getting flashbacks here. This looks really familiar in terms of what they're trying to do. And I just think the Niners are a little bit further along. And part of the reason that the formula has worked is they've committed to it. Like, this is who they want to be. And I give them credit because they've evolved a lot. And I'll just give you an example. A few weeks ago, the 49ers were playing the Dolphins, and Marcel, our teammate down in Miami, and I did a combo piece. And basically it was, McDaniel and Shanahan are running the same offense, but they're doing it in very different ways. You've got Miami with the blazing speed, and you got the 49ers with just blunt force, right? The Niners weren't always about blunt force, and they didn't set out to do that in 2017 when Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over. What happened was they came in. Kyle Shanahan, he'll be the first to tell you, he was always looking for guys who could separate, right? Like that when he was looking at receivers, who can create the most
speed.
He wanted the speed. He wanted route running. He wanted guys who could get open on their own. And he brought in Pierre Garçon because he thought Garçon would be the guy who would be the one physical presence. And then he kind of saw where the game was going. And then they got George Kittle, and then they got Deebo Samuel. And it was like, wait, this could be a little different. We could come at teams a different way and wear them down and be the most physical team in any game, which is at least going to give you a chance. It's not going to guarantee anything, but it's at least going to give you a chance in the fourth quarter if you can keep it close and you're wearing teams down with your physicality. And they've steered into that. I always say now, 49ers are about sacks and yak. Those are the two foundations of this team. And it really is. If you look at their yards after catch, they lead the league. They have for years. And their D-line, we know what kind of investments they've made. You've seen that there in Washington doing a similar type of thing. And so I think what has worked is not only have they been willing to evolve, but when they evolve into something that has worked, they've really grasped onto it and steered into it. And McCaffrey, I was talking to John Lynch about this recently, is very interesting because it was a little bit of a bold swing for them. But it also, John Lynch calls him a force multiplier, where he is the type of player who can kind of raise all ships, right? Like he does that. We were talking about earlier, that gravity. And I think they viewed him as that. And it was a unique opportunity, not necessarily, we've got to get a running back. This is a guy who can do a lot of different things that can kind of take us to another level. And obviously they're in a situation where they're in their window right now to try to win a Super Bowl. So they're willing to make that move. But I really do think it's a combination of all of those things that I just mentioned.
So how much have you been able to watch of Washington so far? I mean, we're taping this early in the week. So how much are you able
to I did watch the game. I watched the Sunday night game at home last night. I apologize to Washington fans. That was a brutal way to end that one. My heart goes out to them, but I watched that one, and then I watched a little bit this morning, just kind of rewatching that game from a couple weeks ago, the previous Giants game.
So,
but I haven't dove in too much yet.
Does anything, you talk about D-line, but does anything else stick out at you where and this might be getting too much in the weeds, and if you can't answer it, that's fine. But like, do you see something where you say, okay, this is something that separates the Niners from them at this stage in the development? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you've been able to even pinpoint that at all.
Yeah,
that's okay.
Yeah, and it's not even a knock on Washington, but just the thing that would jump out to me is like the way the rest of the defense is built out. I think the front four, you see a lot of similarities. 49ers at the linebacker level are the best in the league, and I personally don't think it's that close. Like, if you turn on the tape, you watch, especially Greenlaw and Warner, those guys, the middle of the field is a no-fly zone against the 49ers, essentially. Both of those guys are physical. They can run to the ball. They can cover. They do all those things. Azeez Al-Shire, their third linebacker, is a good player. And again, not a knock on Washington. It's just you're not the best in the league, right? Like that's
I think it is. Yeah, no. I mean, that's different. But that's what I'm saying, like, because you've seen the development and how they built this. And that's where, I would agree, like they lost one of their linebackers, but still, I don't think it's not near what San Francisco's level is too.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that sticks out. I will say the other thing that has set the Niners apart, this is more of a general statement than a comparison to the Commanders, but the Niners spent big money in the offseason to get cornerback Charvarius Ward from Kansas City. And that was a game changer for them defensively as well, because that was the biggest weakness on this team last year was the cornerback position, really the defensive back position and in general. And a lot of it was, if you go look at kind of just the raw counting stats, they were top 5 in the league in passing yards per game allowed, which looks good, right, on paper. And then you look at all the pass interference penalties they had, where they led the league by a lot, and the yardage they were giving up on those pass interference penalties, they led the league by a lot. So all of those things, but Charvarius Ward gave them a legitimate number 1 corner, and it jumps out when you watch them play a team like Seattle, physical. And you've got Ward shadowing DK Metcalf. And I can't remember, John, in the 6 years that Kyle Shanahan's been here, whether it was Robert Saleh or DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coordinator, where they were shadowing anybody. This was cover 3 for the most part, quarters occasionally, mostly zone, not going to shadow Richard Sherman on one side, whoever else on the other side, that kind of thing. But they have enough confidence in Charvarius Ward. Hey, you're one of the best press corners in the league. We're going to let you do this. You're going to be physical. He's really good against the run as well. Probably doesn't get enough credit for that. That has been another game changer. But I just think overall, it is a physicality that the 49ers have. And it can work against them too, if we're being honest, because if you look at their injury list over the last few years, it is pretty lengthy compared to other teams. And I think part of that is because they are so intent on being the most physical team in every game they play, that there's a little bit of a tax to pay for that. But I think that's what stands out. And it's just a culture. I think it's just getting to that point where everybody is bought in. You're looking for players who fit that mold, but also guys who maybe don't fit that mold on college tape, and they arrive at a place and they look around and see what everybody else is doing and say, I got to do that too if I want to fit in here.
Where do you think they're still vulnerable?
Yeah, I mean, the Purdy thing is still like, it's just a question mark, because you just got to see him do it over and over until you buy in. And I'll say this, he's had a little bit of luck, in each of these games. The Miami game, the one interception he threw was on 4th down, and he threw it 25 yards down the field. It was basically a punt. Like, it worked out for the best, actually, because they just bat it down.
Right.
Tampa, but the Dolphins had the ball at midfield. So that was a lucky break. The Tampa game, first play of the game, he audibles into the wrong play, gets blasted for a 9-yard sack, and they get a roughing the passer penalty because it was helmet to helmet. So instead of a 9-yard loss, it's a 15-yard gain. Against Seattle the other night, he throws one right to Quandre Diggs. Diggs drops it. Yeah. And a few plays later, they go down and score. Maybe even the next play is really quick score after that. So those are the things, like, the little bit of luck that may run out. So you've got to be concerned about that. Injuries, like I just mentioned, that's a concern for every team, I realize, but for this team in particular is something there. And I would say just in general, the defense has been excellent, but they have been tested in their depth a lot, particularly on the interior of the defensive line. And I would also throw in, especially against the Commanders, the thing I'm going to be watching this week is those 2 stud defensive tackles against the interior of the 49ers offensive line, which, to their credit, has been a lot better than a lot of us expected and has gotten better as the year has gone on. But that is still a largely unproven group in the middle there. Jake Brendel, Aaron Banks, Spencer Burford. You have a rookie, a second-year guy, and a kind of a journeyman. They had 3 combined starts between them entering this season. So this will be a big test for them in terms of that. So those would be kind of a few of the areas that I would say they could be a little bit vulnerable. Special teams, they've had some issues with block kicks earlier in the year, but I will admit the special teams has been really, really good over the last 5 weeks or so, all the way around. Ray McLeod, their returner, has been a kind of a revelation. I think he's close to breaking one here pretty soon. So those are a few things, but yeah, I mean, this is a really good team, John, and I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat that, but they're also not perfect by any means.
But I kind of look at them as they're as strong. I mean, I think they're going to be right there in the end, depending on how Purdy progresses. And while that last thing on the defense, I got one more question after that, but is there a spot where you say, like, this is where teams have success against them defensively? Because it is a very good unit. So when a team has success, what are they doing?
Well, when a team has success, they have Patrick Mahomes. That's kind of been, really,
yeah.
Honestly,
I love that.
Yeah, that's kind of really been the only blip on the screen that they've had this year. They got pushed around a little bit in Atlanta back in October, but they were without 8 starters on defense that day. So it's kind of hard to even really hold that against them. But I will say this, going to the Kansas City game, it wasn't just Patrick Mahomes. They struggled with some motion. There were some eye candy things that were working against them. in that game. Even against Miami, there were open receivers at the second level on the outside the hashes a lot of times, and Tua was just missing them. They were tough throws, but he was missing them, throws that he'd been making throughout most of the year. So if they can't get a push, I think that is a big part of it, that especially those interior guys. Eric Armstead being back has been huge for them, but their interior defensive line is banged up right now. Bosa is great. They're really good at end. They have a lot of good players in that regard, but I would say just motion and being able to use kind of the intermediate levels, maybe outside the middle of the field where the linebackers roam, seems to be the places where maybe they have a little bit of issue. And again, if you can protect up the middle in particular, there's at least somewhere to escape to when you play Nick Bosa.
Last thing, how's our guy Trent doing? We can see him playing.
Yeah, he's tremendous. He's still as good as ever. He's had a couple of blips here and there. He got banged up back in week 3 in Denver, but since he's been back, their run game has taken off, and it's funny watching him with Brock Purdy, because I did a SportsCenter hit last week and was talking about how one of the things that the confidence things that the team has in Brock Purdy is how confident Purdy is, right? Like they draw confidence from Purdy's confidence, and you can see it in his celebrations, right? So like after each of his first 2 games, Kyle Shanahan in the meetings on Monday was showing video clips of Purdy to the whole team, but not of like his throws, of him celebrating, because he does these like finger guns and he like headbutts people. And Trent Williams seems to get a huge kick out of it. Like he always will look after the play, like look back at Purdy, because he wants to like get a chuckle out of whatever the celebration is. So he certainly seems to be enjoying himself. But you know what? When you're riding a 7-game win streak, you've clinched the division with 3 weeks to go. I think most people feel that way.
Life is pretty good. I miss talking to him. He was always one of my favorites. Nick, appreciate you coming on. I told you be 20 or under, and it's 19 minutes. So
there you go. We did it.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
We did. That's a feather in your cap.
There you go. Thanks, man.
You got it, bud.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Nick for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I will be back on Friday with my keys and prediction for Washington's game at San Francisco. I'll talk to you next time.